President Bola Tinubu completes his first year in office. The Nigerian economy at this time has witnessed a series of transformative reforms that have significantly impacted various sectors. One of the hallmarks of President Bola Tinubu's tenure has been the focus on addressing the long-standing challenges of the Nigerian economy, particularly the issue of fuel subsidies, tax reforms, and foreign exchange unification. Now, which is not only targeted at boosting inflows, but also to provide a more transparent and market-driven mechanism for currency management. While the economy continues to experience significant changes as a result of the reforms, experts say the administration must continue to address long-standing economic issues to create a conducive environment for investment and growth. Well, let's put this into perspective. I'm being joined by the founder and chief consultant with B. Adedipe Associates Limited, Dr. Biodun Adedipe. Thank you so much, Dr. Adedipe. It's good to have you on the program. I think exactly 12 months ago, we also had you to analyze President Tinubu when he got into office. Thank you for joining us again today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you also for having me.
All right, let's start with what everyone has termed or referred to be bold steps, bold and courageous steps being taken by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Can we take it from that point? The fallout of some of these steps, of all of these steps, is what many are talking about. How prepared was government for the fallout of subsidy removal? How prepared was government for the fallout of the FX market, opening up the foreign exchange market, allowing the naira to find its level against the dollar? How do you see us managing all of this up? What is your understanding so far with 12 months in office as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
All right, thank you so very much. Those are two very critical policy shifts, as I would describe them. They were major policy shifts that, yes, if you look at the manifesto of Mr. President before he came into office, it was very clear about these issues among several others that formed the kernel of the reforms he would introduce if he came into the office. But I think there's something here we must put in perspective. It's a different thing entirely where you are making a plan before you get into office, and then when you get into office and face the reality of so many in terms of either information or data that is not made available to those outside of government. Now, when you come across that, now you play it against your own major policy choices. And then the other side to it is, how will those impacted by this regulation, the change in the policies, how would they react or respond as the case may be? Now, I put it deliberately that way. To react means they take it negatively. To respond means they receive it as a necessary treatment for the malaise, the economy, and the suffering. Now, it means then that when we look at all those, yes, mentally, I would say the president and his team, we are prepared in terms of the challenges they were going to face, all right? Probably what they did not envisage was the way the citizens mostly will react to those policies. Now, argument has always been generally that these were necessary reforms, no doubt. But then the argument, the debate will now become hydra-headed. Where some will say, yes, it's necessary, that the timing was not good. Some will say, oh, the sequencing was not right, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is that what we expect from his government, I would say, and this is with every sense of responsibility, is to put such a high body of expectation of a change that will bring comfort against the background of decades of what I would call mismanagement of the economy. So if we expect comfort to follow those changes, it's unlikely to happen so quickly. And that is what I see here. So the major challenge I see is getting Nigerians to understand that, yes, number one, these choices were necessary, and that the expectation of an immediate comfort following these changes was unlikely to happen. So they needed to also have communicated that very clearly. So, and not, of course, coming back to, maybe be apologetic at some point, which I think is unnecessary. I had that on occasions. Okay? People will also now push back and say, you really didn't have a clear economic agenda, which is incorrect. They came with a clear economic agenda, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about these issues today. So, but the reality is that also, when you begin to implement a policy, you see certain responses by those impacted, what you commonly call regulatory impact analysis. You see the impact and how they are responding. It then makes you to tinker again with the policies. So, and that is where they began to talk about palliatives and so on and so forth. So it's a necessary thing when you are managing an economy for the experience you have had in the last 1 year to have gone that way.
All right, Dr. Adedikpe, I think it's a very good way to start this conversation by you taking us to understand the economic agenda and all of this. But let's now go to something that is very recent, which is the GDP figures, which came up and put Nigeria Q1 2024 at 2.98%. This, according to the minister, when he was reeling out a scorecard just at the ministerial briefing, he says that's at least higher than our population growth, which at the moment stands at 2.4%. Does this mean that we are beginning to see the positives of some of these policies as instituted by government?
I agree with him on that interpretation, but I will expand it a little. Because typically, when we look at GDP growth rate, we compare similar periods. So if you look at the growth rate of our economy in the first quarter of 2023, at about 2.31%. Now, this year coming at 2.98 is a significant improvement over what they had in the first quarter of 2023. And I think that is the first good news here. The second one is what he mentioned, that it's a faster growth rate than the growth rate of our population. And in fact, at 2.44%. Okay? So which means we are in the right direction, and the economy seems to be responding accordingly. Put that side by side with Purchasing Managers Index that gives you an idea of business confidence in terms of planning forward. That also is above 50 points, which means there is an expectation by businesses generally that this economy is going to expand going forward into about 6 months and possibly beyond. So which means then that what we received as the report for the first quarter of this year is actually in the right direction. And of course, don't forget, and this is where I tend to disagree with some analysts that compared first quarter 2024 with the fourth quarter of 2023. That analysis is faulty. And why is it faulty? It has taken a divergence from the historical growth pattern of the Nigerian economy. Now, typically, and this is talking about data way back to about 40, 50 years, okay? Usually, the economy grows slowest in the first quarter of the year, okay? So what this now signals to me as an analyst is that we expect the economy to grow faster in the second, third, and then usually fourth quarter is where we have traditionally had the fastest growth rate. So that is why usually when we do outlook, we review what happened in the first quarter, and then we come in with a fresh outlook for the second quarter. Then at half year, we do a similar thing, in which case you've seen the performance of the economy. So for me, this is good news for Nigeria, and it's a confidence booster, both for the government and for those who also do business within this environment.
Let's look at the sectors that have also contributed to growth. We have the financial and insurance space doing pretty well when we look at these figures, while even the oil and gas, I think, are not doing as much as expected. Can you make us understand why it's looking this way?
All right. There are two things there. Number one is contribution by the various sectors of the economy to our GDP. Then the second is the growth rate of each of those sectors. Like you rightly said, finance and insurance fastest growth rate. Okay, and you can relate to that also when the ones that are public entities announced their results for 2023, that in spite of the headwinds, they still turned out very significant profits and, of course, revenue, as the case may be. Now, it means then that that sector is getting certain things right, and we also must not forget that the economy is also changing in its nature and structure. Now, technology is taking a stronger pace, faster pace, okay, and getting stronger in the economy, which case our economy is digitizing more, although not that rapidly. But where we see the impact more is in finance and insurance, with the impact of fintech and insurtech, which are major new developments in those sectors. Those are also creating platforms for those entities to generate more revenue. And that is what we see playing out there, okay, contributing more to the GDP and also growing very rapidly. Then we look at other sectors as well. Agric, in any case, and likely crop production still dominates contribution to GDP. They didn't grow that strongly, okay? And we again expect that as the rest of the year goes by with what the government is doing, the agric ecosystem, we may see agric also begin to grow very strongly. Of course, ICT remains very strong in both considerations, whether in terms of contribution to GDP, where it plays second anyway, or in terms of the growth happening in that sector. So it is also quite strong. And I pick out, 5 others. Well, I've mentioned 3 of them anyway. Finance and insurance, banking and insurance, that is finance. And we have, of course, agriculture that I mentioned. I've mentioned ICT. The 4 others that complement them and dominate the economy, they are still dominant, either in terms of contribution to GDP or even growth rate. Okay? So if that is the case, it means our economy is still going in the trajectory that we have seen in the last 5 to 6 years, especially from 2018 till date, where, number one, services are driving growth in the economy. We still saw that first quarter of this year. Okay? The oil sector, of course, has been somehow weak because there are not so many new investments on the one hand, and of course, the other side to it is domestic problems relating to oil theft and the rest of them. So in which case, what we have seen play out here is not any different than what we expected. And they all also point in the direction that, now, what I usually do, and let me just say this to you, is that once we get GDP data out, I look at the share of each sector in our GDP, and then compare with the share of each of those sectors, 19 of them in the summary, against what they contributed in the previous quarter. So from there, you can now say, okay, which of them contracted in terms of contribution to GDP, and which of them gained, and which one remained flat, as I like to always put it. And what you find this time around is, again, interestingly, not any different than what we had in the preceding years. And simply, the way I summarize it is this, that when you look at the first quarter of this year, okay, the level of these 19 sectors expanded their share of the GDP. 7 of them contracted in their share of GDP, and 1 remained flat. Of course, the one that remained flat is admin and support services. Okay? So when you look at this, it means the story of our economy and the sectors of it has not changed in any way. So, but the good point is that in the aggregate, the economy is growing in the right direction. Now, if you also check what I call the trend line, because oftentimes analysts don't talk about that. That is why the value you get from analyzing the economy comes mostly from trend analysis. When you check the trend line of our GDP growth rate in the last 10 years, it has been trending upwards. So for those who therefore say the economy is contracting or the economy is in recession or troubled, I find it difficult to agree with them because the data is saying something different. There's a trend line that is upward sloping for our GDP growth rate in the last 10 years. So which means everything still looks positive for us. And those are the things I believe we should be emphasizing so that those in business can develop the confidence to go out there and exact more.
Another great one. Let me take you back now to business condition. That's the business environment condition here, where we still see macroeconomic uncertainties and, of course, difficulties in doing business. High energy prices, operation costs, uncertainties. Dr. Adipe, I can go on and on. And, of course, now we've seen another increase in rates by the MPC, which now puts the MPR at about 24.75%. That's where we are. Now, all of this, what's the impact on the business environment moving forward? When do we start to have that internal confidence in our business environment?
Yeah, thank you so very much. Now, for me, I feel worried with the way we are pushing the, let me call it the critical monetary policy tool, which is the monetary policy rate. Now, we've put it to 26.25% now, with the last adjustment made by the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, what that also means is that borrowing for businesses from the banking system has become more expensive, which case borrowing cost has gone up. That's the reality businesses face today. Now, what that means then is that it will become more difficult for banks to lend profitably. There's something in bank we call profitable bank lending. And what it means simply is that the borrower you are giving money to will be able to use that money effectively and generate sufficient revenue to repay the loan, and then there'll be something left in the side. So a loan is profitable when something remains in the hand of the borrower. So but with rising borrowing costs, that space is contracting the more, in which case more loans may turn unprofitable. And of course, what that will mean for banks also is a likely uptick in non-performing loans on the one hand. Now, the other side to it is the exchange value of the naira, which of course is still, we have not yet gotten to the level of stability, because there are occasions you see movements in the rate in the market, and you ask yourself, this movement is difficult to relate with the demand-supply interaction. We call it nexus economics. So where you see that, yes, supply has not in any way that significant, and demand has not also changed significantly. So why is the rate moving the way it is moving? So in which case, there is a major consideration here. Yes, the central bank has used this major tool, that's the MPR, which makes also naira-denominated financial instruments more rewarding for investors. So that will draw in more foreign investment. In fact, as at end of business yesterday, foreign investors in our stock market accounted for 34.9% of our market capitalization. And that is the highest we have seen since 2021. So that's a positive in a way, all right? But what you now raised that we are discussing now is the critical issue, and that is to ensure we sustain their confidence so that the monies brought in to invest in this system will not troop out as quickly as they came in when the environment became attractive to them. So business confidence, very, very important. And how does that come? That means two things essentially for me. First is the utterances that key government functionaries make. And I want to advise very strongly that our top government functionaries should stop talking about a need to do another economic agenda. This government has an agenda. They should stop giving the impression that there is no agenda. We want to develop, want to set up a committee. There's no need for all of those. It is a normal thing that economic agents react to policies. And so their own job will be to make corrections here and there as necessary in the course of the journey. Then the second one also is that the actions that they take as well, but there's a difference between what we call the announcement effect, which is the one I made reference to, and the actual actions. So now, if the things the government put before us they were going to do, we actually see them doing those things, and they regularly bring scorecards, not wait until another year before ministers show their scorecard. Whatever is working well, let them showcase it. They should not be apologetic about letting Nigerians, including their critics, know about the good things that they are doing. I mean, I got a video that I saw just a few minutes before I joined you on this program, where a Nigerian said he went to a high commission in London to renew his passport, and it took him 2.5 hours to do that and return to his basic commentary. And the guy said he deliberately did that video so that people can make it go viral. That is a positive for Nigeria. So that are the kind of things I expect them to do. You're taking some actions that are bringing positive results. Showcase those results. That is what they do in other countries. That is what India does. India, we announced that, look, we are pursuing Make in India, which is want to make India conducive for investors to come and produce here. So what they do in that is to showcase the positive things about their country. Belarus and so many others, that's what they all do. Okay? So, but in our own case, we are silent about the positive that are happening. We keep talking about infrastructure gap. And I ask myself, infrastructure gap, is the state of infrastructure in Nigeria the same as it was 10 years ago? Certainly not. So what have we done? What has changed? Rail corridors are now operational, 4 of them today in Nigeria. 0 10 years ago. Okay? We look at our roads also. The state of certain roads 10 years ago cannot be compared with their state as of today. So those are the kind of things we should showcase so that people see that, yes, the government is spending money, no doubt. But the money being spent is also delivering in the area of improved infrastructure. So we should not be silent about that. Our airport terminals are not exactly the way they are today. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, bad shape. Today, airport terminals in good shape. Why don't we emphasize all those? So those are the kind of things I want to advise them. Those are positives coming from the action they have taken. That's how to market the country to investors, whether local or foreign. How about foreign investors that are setting up businesses? I was in the commissioning of a state-of-the-art laboratory just yesterday in Lagos. And that is one of its kind in the world. That is done by a foreign entity. So now, where is the noise that we are making about that? How did we attract them? Why did they come here to set up that factory? I mean, that laboratory. And they mentioned it, state of the art, one of the best in the world. And it's by foreign investors. Why is our government not talking about such? Those are positives. Then bring those ones as models to showcase other investors that what they are seeing here are not challenges. What they are seeing are opportunities. And they are coming here to take advantage of the opportunities.
Very, very interesting one. Before I let you go, we now see that we have a bit of improved production with regards to crude. And government is focusing so very much on the CNG policy of the administration. So if I'm to ask you, what do you think? What positives do we have in all of this?
Well, it's serving 2 major purposes. One is you are greening transportation. That means environment-friendly, operation of mass transit. Then secondly, the fact that you're also addressing the problem of logistics. So let me tell you, one central thing in any economy, if there's going to be growth, is logistics. And for me as an analyst, that is what I picked out of what made China become what it is today. For the economy of China to grow and become what it is today and remain strong, in fact, the latest projections of IMF, which was released yesterday, about the Chinese economy in terms of output for the year, is that they've raised their outlook and expectation for Chinese economy this year. And I told myself, why is that so? Because the Chinese government deliberately invested in roads, in railway, and dry ports. The network of those 3 made anyone able to set up factory anywhere within China. China is 10 times landmass of Nigeria. So if we aim to do 10% of what China did, then we can possibly manufacture anything anywhere in Nigeria. Okay? That is about logistics. And for me, therefore, this government is in the right direction. Okay? Putting a lot more emphasis on capital projects. The fundamental one is roads. I'm a Nigerian that will encourage this government to proceed aggressively with the Lagos-Calabar coastal road. And I say that with every sense of responsibility. I've been aware of that project in the last 20 years.
Right, sir, no problem. What
I've been talking about it for over 20 years. So now it's a government that has the courage to actually begin construction of that road. They should go ahead with it. But anytime I hear about it, I think about the green belt in the USA, which means eventually we'll connect Lagos and Calabar, Calabar to Maiduguri, Maiduguri to Sokoto, Sokoto back to Lagos. So you have, an expressway that runs around Nigeria. They call it the green belt in the US. So other roads now will be linking cities and towns with it. So that is critical logistics. So it facilitates production anywhere, and of course, moving materials in, the finished products out of the factories from anywhere. So for me, therefore, is the right direction. Any extra money they lay their hands on, let them put it into road infrastructure. And that will make a big difference for this economy.
Thank you so much, Chief Consultant and Founder B. Adedikpe Associates Limited, there, Dr. Biodun Adedikpe. Thank you for your time on the program. We really do appreciate this.
It's always my pleasure being with you. Thank you for having me.
All right, well.